My name is Lily Nguyen, and I'm 42. If you walked into our house that morning, you'd say it looked peaceful. Sun on the oak floors, the faint smell of coffee, a quiet weekend waiting to be spent. If you stayed 10 minutes, you'd hear the sound that undermines peace. Control, spoken softly, and always dressed like reason. I had a simple plan. Run to the hardware store, pick up different screws, come back, and finish the floating shelves in my office. I'd been sketching the brackets on dotted paper the night before, the way I do when a design won't stop whispering. The keys to our only car, a glossy SUV, were on the ceramic tray by the door where my boyfriend, Ethan Tran, likes them kept. Clean surfaces, tidy lives. That's his thing, or that's what he says. I grabbed the keys, called out, "Back in an hour," and twisted the handle. "Where do you think you're going?" His voice floated down from the top of the stairs, calm but sharpened, like a knife that's just touched the whetstone. I turned. Ethan stood there with his arms crossed, bare feet on the landing, looking down at me, not like a partner, like a headmaster deciding if my skirt length violated a policy I hadn't signed. "To the hardware store," I said, keeping my tone level. "The screws for the shelves are wrong. I'm going to swap them." He descended slowly, eyes not on me, but on the keys in my hand. "Did you ask me if you could take the car?" For a breath, I thought he was joking. Then I recognized the choreography. Act 1, make the small thing a litmus test. Act 2, call it courtesy. Act 3, turn it into law. "It's our car," I said. "I'm gone an hour." "It's my car," he corrected, almost gently, the way you correct a child who mispronounces a word. "Registration's in my name. Insurance in my name. Your name isn't on a single piece of paper. You know that." I felt the heat rise to my face and forced it down. I'm a partner at an architectural firm. My job is to anticipate stress points, how weight moves through a structure until one hairline crack becomes a failure line. I had seen this crack before. The car was never about transportation. It was about a ledger. "When we bought it, your father said it was smarter for taxes if it was in your name," I said. I went along. "We share the payments. We share the life." "Well," he said, holding out an empty palm, "you can share it by asking." I stared at his hand. The keys in mine felt suddenly heavy, like they'd gained density or I'd lost strength. 1,000 small decisions flashed. Who chose the temperature setting on the thermostat? Him. Who handled the calendar, his mother's birthdays and brunches in bold? Who had the final say on expensive purchases? We'll run it by Dad. He knows these things. It hadn't felt like surrender in the beginning. It felt like a relief not to argue over noise. But noise accumulates. It becomes pressure. "Ethan, I need to pick up screws," I said, and there was a new hardness in my voice I rarely used at home. "I won't be long." "Keys," he repeated, palm unmoved, eyes steady. "No car until you learn to ask first. I am not doing this every weekend." We stood there, two people on opposite banks of a narrow river, acting as if it were an ocean. I watched the way his jaw set. I watched the confidence there, the certainty that the terms had already been set, and I had already agreed to them somewhere in the fine print of us. He thought this was about a car. It wasn't. It never is. I could have argued. I could have itemized the down payment from my savings, the monthly transfers from our joint account, which was mostly my income, rerouted by payroll into a pool his father helped us manage. I could have listed every time I'd bent around his schedule, his preferences, his definition of courtesy. But I learned long ago that when a wall won't move, you don't throw yourself against it. You get quiet. You take measurements. You plan the demolition. I placed the keys in his hand. "You're right," I said, and heard how flat my voice sounded in the airy foyer. I should have asked. The look he gave me, self-satisfied, almost tender with victory, was something shaped by practice. He relaxed, smiled with one corner of his mouth, and said, "See? This is easy when we respect each other." He turned, pocketed the keys, and went back upstairs, steps soft on the runner. The house was silent again. The sun still touched the floor. The smell of coffee wasn't ruined. If anything, the quiet had a new quality to it, the way a hotel room can look exactly like home until you try to sleep there. I stood with my hand still on the door handle and felt something settle inside me. Not rage, not even sorrow. Decision. A decision that had been drying in the open air for years, hardening like concrete, finally cured. That day, I played the role he expected. I set my tools aside and finished the shelves using the wrong screws, letting the wood carry the lie. I asked meekly if I could ride along when he decided to go to the grocery store, and again when he announced we should drop by his parents' place for a quick brunch. He loved it. He loved granting me permissions in small, generous gestures, like a benevolent king convinced the Nile is love. Inside, I wrote lists. Architects live and die by checklists, order of operations, dependencies, critical path. I split a page in my dot grid notebook and titled it Phase 1, Stabilize. Phase 2, Remove load. Phase 3, Rebuild. Under Stabilize, I wrote 3 items and drew boxes I intended to fill: mobility, money, counsel. That evening, when he fell asleep in front of a streaming show, I walked to my office and looked at the shelves. Perfectly level, wrong screws, shining slightly under the paint like faint scars. I touched the wall and felt the stud behind it. People think walls are solid. They're just layers: paint, gypsum, empty space, wood. If you know what you're doing, you can make a new doorway where a blank plane used to be. You can change the way a home breathes. The next morning, I woke before him and boiled water for coffee. The kettle hissed, the window turned pale, my phone lit with work emails. Deadlines were stacked in clean rows. I answered them. I put on a blazer. When Ethan offered me a ride to the office, "I'll pick you up at 5:30, I smiled and said, "Perfect." He liked that. He kissed the air near my cheek and said, "See, we're back on the same page." I watched him drive away, the SUV floating at the curb like a promise with fine print. At lunch, I took the long way around the block. There's a dealership 3 streets over from my firm, tucked between a bakery and a glass and steel showroom. I've passed it 100 times, letting my eyes slide over a particular sedan that has lived in the corner of my mind for years. I stepped inside and said, "I'd like to test drive this one." The wheel felt right in my hands. The engine sounded like competence. "This is a good fit for you," the salesperson said, a little surprised at my certainty. "It is," I said, and I wasn't talking about the car. I signed what needed signing. My name. My insurance. They promised delivery to my office garage by end of day. I thanked them and walked back through the noon light with my blazer slung over my arm, the city noise reframed as a score. Back at my desk, I opened a new browser tab and searched for a bank that doesn't have Tran in the management history or family friend in Ethan's vocabulary. I opened a checking account, a savings account, an investment account, each form ending with my name alone. On the HR portal, I changed the direct deposit destination. It took 30 seconds. 7 years condensed to a single confirmation email. Then I made the call that mattered most. "Ben, it's Lylene Gwynn. I need you to look at a power of attorney I signed 3 years ago in favor of Richard Tran. Yes, Ethan's father. I need to revoke it. Today." Ben's voice was steady and sharp. "Send me everything you have." I emailed scanned PDFs and watched the progress bar creep across my screen. In the reflection of my monitor, I could see myself, the woman who knows where the load-bearing beams are and how to move them without bringing the house down on her head. At 5:25, I rode the elevator down. I stepped out into the fluorescent wash of the garage and smelled new leather before I saw it. The delivery truck had just pulled away. My sedan, the one I had been told was impractical, was parked in my spot, the paint deep and quiet. A text pulsed on my phone from Ethan. "Here, out front." I wrote back, "Give me 5." I slid into my car. The engine turned over with a low, confident hum. In that sound, I heard the relief of a beam finally taking the weight it was designed for. When I pulled out onto the street, I saw our SUV idling by the curb. Ethan looked up, confused. I lowered my window and smiled. "I'll meet you at home," I said. "I've got my own ride." His expression flickered. Confusion, annoyance, then something I hadn't seen in years. Uncertainty. The light turned green. I eased forward and watched him disappear in my rear view, the way distance softens details. People think the first crack in a building happens during an earthquake. It doesn't. It happens long before, invisible, when the plans are changed to please someone who doesn't know what they're doing. You don't hear it until the day the wind hits just right and the seam sighs. Saturday was the wind. I drove, and for the first time in a very long time, the road felt like mine. When I woke that Monday, the house had a stillness that could have been peace, or aftermath. Ethan hummed in the shower, cheerful in the way people get after they think they've won. I made coffee, buttered toast, and watched sunlight crawl up the cabinets. It was the same kitchen as always, but something inside it had shifted, like the air pressure before a storm. He came down buttoned and polished, the scent of cedar cologne trailing him. "Morning, babe," he said, sliding a hand along my shoulder and pressing a kiss to my temple. "You sleep okay?" I smiled without answering. I'd slept better than I expected. There's a kind of calm that arrives after the point of no return, the peace of having decided. That morning, I let him drive me to work, just like he'd offered. The ride was a performance, both of us rehearsing old lines. He talked about the weekend, about brunch at his parents' place, about how his dad had found a great new fund we should move our investments into. I murmured in the right places, studying his reflection in the passenger side mirror. He looked confident, even kind. No one who saw us would guess that everything between us had become a quiet, strategic war. 5:30, he said as we pulled up to my building. "Don't make me wait, okay?" "Wouldn't dream of it," I replied. He smiled, satisfied, and drove off. I stood on the sidewalk for a beat longer, then exhaled and headed inside. I didn't go straight to my office. Instead, I crossed the street to a small cafe and opened my notebook, the one labeled Phase 1, Stabilize. I drew 3 boxes beneath it. Mobility Money Council. The first was checked. My car was mine, sitting downstairs in the garage waiting for me. Just that knowledge made my pulse slow. The second box, money, would take more work. I finished my coffee, went up to the 14th floor, and spent the next few hours pretending to draft blueprints while opening browser tabs in the corner of my screen. A new bank account, a savings account, a modest investment account. Nothing flashy, just quiet stability under my own name. When the HR portal asked, "Would you like to change your payroll destination?" I clicked yes and filled in the new routing number. One simple form, and the pipeline that had fed Ethan's control since the start was gone. The confirmation email blinked in my inbox. It was short and transactional. "Your deposit changes will take effect on the next pay cycle." A single paragraph, but it felt like reclaiming oxygen. By lunchtime, I was ready for step 3, counsel. I called Ben Pham, an old friend turned lawyer, the kind who didn't waste words or worry about politeness. "Ben, it's Lily." He hesitated. "Haven't heard that tone in a while. What's going on?" "I need to revoke a power of attorney," I said. "It's under Richard Tran's name, Ethan's father." "The financial planner?" "Yes, the one who's been managing my portfolio for the past 5 years." Ben exhaled. "You're saying managing like it's a crime scene." "It might be." There was a rustle on his end, the sound of papers being shifted. "All right, email me every document, every statement, and don't let him know yet. I'll have my team start a forensic review today." "But Lily..." "Yeah? This is going to get messy." "I know." I hung up and sent him everything. PDFs, statements, old emails Ethan had forwarded about family investment strategies. Then I leaned back in my chair and stared at the skyline. I'd designed half the buildings I could see. Strong lines, clean glass, order. But now I understood something they don't teach in architecture school. Every structure, no matter how flawless, has a point where weight becomes too much for its frame. At exactly 5:30, Ethan texted, "Here, out front." I texted back, "Don't wait, I'll drive myself." He didn't respond right away. When he finally did, the bubble showed his irritation. "Since when?" I smiled to myself and typed, "Since today." When I reached the parking lot, my new car was waiting. Sleek and unapologetic. I slid in, inhaled that new leather scent, and started the engine. The sound filled the quiet like confidence returning to a room that had forgotten it. I pulled up beside the SUV at the curb. Ethan was in the driver's seat, scrolling his phone. When he looked up, confusion passed through his face like a shadow. "What's that?" he asked through the open window. "My car," I said, keeping my tone even. "So I don't have to ask anymore." He blinked, as if the words didn't register. "You bought a car?" "Leased it. My money, my name, my insurance." He tried to laugh. "You're joking." "No, just tired." I shifted gears and drove off, watching him shrink in the rearview mirror. That night, when I got home, he was already there, arms crossed, face storming. "We need to talk," he said before I'd even shut the door. "Okay," I said lightly, setting my bag down. "You bought a car without me?" His voice was sharp now. "A $60,000 car? We're supposed to make financial decisions together." "We don't," I said simply. "Not anymore." His jaw tightened. Lily, this attitude, it's not you. It's me, I said, without the leash. He froze, mouth half open. Then came the practice lecture. How relationships require trust. How my impulsiveness could jeopardize our goals. How I'd embarrassed him in front of his parents. I just wanted you to ask, he finished, lowering his voice. That's all. No, I said, steady. You wanted control, and you had it. Every line item, every signature, every temperature setting in this house was yours. I'm done playing the quiet half. He stared at me, eyes narrowing. What are you saying? I'm saying I've moved my salary. I've hired a lawyer, and Richard doesn't have power of attorney over me anymore. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost theatrical. You did what? I took back what's mine. For a second, he didn't speak. Then he laughed, too loudly. You think you understand how finances work? You'd be lost without him. My father has a plan for our... Your father, I interrupted, has been using my portfolio like his personal fund. I'll know the details soon. He stopped laughing. We stood there in silence, the sound of the refrigerator hum filling the distance. I'll fix this, he said finally. You're overreacting. Maybe, I said, walking past him. Or maybe you're just not used to me reacting at all. That night, I lay awake in the guest room. I could hear him pacing downstairs, hear the muffled sound of his phone, his mother's voice rising in agitation, his father's lower, more controlled. I didn't need to catch the words. I knew the tone of panic when power slips. The next morning, the house was cold. He'd left early, the SUV gone from the driveway. I brewed coffee, sat at my kitchen island, and opened my email. There it was, Ben's message, subject line bold and concise. Preliminary findings, concerning. I clicked it open. The words blurred for a second before they settled into focus. Unauthorized transfers, irregular investments, potential self-dealing. We'll confirm by Friday. The steam from my coffee curled into the light, thin and slow. The plan was working, faster than I'd imagined. But as I read those words, I realized something. I wasn't just dismantling a financial trap. I was tearing down the structure of a life. I closed the laptop, leaned back, and let the quiet settle. It wasn't victory yet, just the sound of foundations cracking. And once you hear a crack, you can't unhear it. For the next 3 days, the silence between Ethan and me was almost clinical. He left early, came home late, and filled the house with the smell of someone else's cologne and the faint hum of denial. He didn't ask me about the lawyer. He didn't ask me about the car. He pretended I hadn't just pulled the rug from under his father's empire. But control has a scent when it burns. It smells like panic trying to disguise itself as patience. On Thursday, I came home to find Ethan sitting in the living room with a glass of whiskey, still in his work shirt, sleeves rolled up. The TV was on mute, showing news about the stock market, his kind of background noise. He didn't look up when he said, "Dad wants to meet." "About what?" I asked, setting my keys down. "You know about what," he said, voice flat. "He thinks this audit thing you're pushing has gone too far. He's worried you'll misunderstand some of the transfers." "Misunderstand?" I repeated, careful with my tone. He looked at me then, and there it was again, the same quiet superiority I'd once mistaken for confidence. "My father's been managing your investments for years. You know that. Maybe some funds moved around, but that's how portfolio adjustments work." "Adjustments," I said softly. "That's what he calls using my money to pay off his mortgage?" His face froze. "What?" I didn't answer. I just stared back, letting the question hang in the air like the smell of something burning. 2 days earlier, Ben had sent the full report. I'd printed it out, all 37 pages, and kept it folded neatly in a file on my desk. The audit confirmed what I'd suspected. Years of strategic reallocations, missing account authorizations, and wire transfers to shell companies that led directly to the holding company for Richard Tran's home. Over $200,000 siphoned from my investment portfolio. I hadn't shown Ethan yet. I wanted to see what he'd do when he didn't know I knew. Now I had my answer. Denial first, anger next. "I don't know what you think you've found," Ethan said, setting his glass down a little too hard. "But this is just you, being vindictive. My dad has worked his whole life to build something for this family, for us." "For us?" I echoed. "Or for himself?" He stood then, jaw tight. "You're out of line." I smiled, just slightly. "No, I'm finally in line, with reality." He opened his mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. "Stop. Don't do that thing where you make me sound emotional just because I'm right." The air between us went still. He muttered, "You've changed." I've always been like this, I said. You just never let me show it. That night, I stayed late at the office. I didn't trust being under the same roof with him. My coworkers thought I was working overtime on a proposal. They didn't realize I was drafting my own blueprint for demolition. When I finally drove home, the house was dark except for the light in the upstairs study. Ethan was pacing, phone to his ear, his voice low but sharp. You told me it was under control, he hissed. She's threatening an audit. No, I can't calm her down. She's not the same anymore. I watched from the doorway for a moment before speaking. You're right, I said quietly. I'm not. He spun around, startled. How long have you been standing there? Long enough, I said. Tell your father I'll see him Saturday morning, 10 o'clock, and bring your lawyer.
Lightly!
Ben will be here too, I interrupted. He has charts. He blinked, confused, his composure cracking for the first time. Charts? Yes, I said. You'll understand soon. The next morning, he didn't come down for breakfast. The SUV was gone by the time I left for work. I didn't care. I was already thinking 3 steps ahead. At the office, my assistant knocked gently and handed me an envelope. From Mr. Pham, she said. He said it's urgent. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an addendum to the audit summary. Ben's handwriting scrawled across the top. Lily, you were right. He was using your portfolio as collateral for his private loans. We can prove it. See you Saturday. For the rest of the day, I couldn't focus on anything else. My mind kept replaying all the little conversations that now meant something entirely different. Richard insisting I didn't need to worry about market details. Ethan calling it our investment family plan. The way every transfer notice had been sent to his father's office instead of our shared inbox. They hadn't just managed my money. They'd built a cage out of it. That night, Ethan came home late, looking tired but wired, the kind of tired that smells like fear. We can fix this, he said as soon as he walked in. No hello, no warmth, just strategy. Dad says if we stop the audit now, he'll make sure everything's corrected privately. No lawyers, no headlines. I studied him. Privately means invisibly, I said, and invisibly means it never happened. Do you really want to destroy my family? He asked. His voice cracked on the last word, and for a moment I saw a flash of something, maybe genuine panic, maybe just pride unraveling. I didn't destroy anything, I said softly. I'm just revealing what was already rotten. He stepped closer. Lily, think about what you're doing. I have, I said, every night for the last 7 years. He exhaled, slow and angry. You're making a mistake. No, I said, meeting his eyes. I'm making a choice. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in the office with the audit files spread out like crime scene evidence. Each page told a story of arrogance and assumption. The belief that I'd never question the structure because I'd grown comfortable living inside it. But I'm an architect. I notice when things don't align. By the time the clock hit 2 a.m., I had written a list titled, Saturday, Final Drawings. Richard and Mrs. Tran arrived 10 a.m. Ethan present. Ben leads. Document signed, restitution plus separation. At the bottom of the page, I drew a single clean line. Underneath it, I wrote, Freedom equals foundation rebuilt. I leaned back, feeling the quiet hum of the city through the walls. The shelves in my office stood perfectly level now, anchored into the studs. No more wrong screws. No more pretending balance where there was none. Saturday would be the earthquake, and for once, I wasn't afraid of what might collapse. Saturday came, dressed like any other morning, clear light, the hum of a city already awake. But the air inside my house felt charged, as if the walls knew what was about to happen. I'd spent the night before making coffee I didn't drink and pacing the living room, rehearsing what silence would look like, because silence, when used correctly, is sharper than any accusation. At 9:58 a.m., a black Mercedes pulled into the driveway. Ethan stepped out first, straight-backed and tense. Behind him came his parents, Richard Tran in his navy suit, Mrs. Tran in pearls and disapproval. They carried the confidence of people who'd never been told no. I stood by the kitchen island when they walked in. My lawyer, Ben Pham, was already seated at the table with a leather folder in front of him, calm as a surgeon about to begin. Lily, Richard said smoothly, setting down his briefcase. We're all here because we value family. Let's clear up this misunderstanding before it damages something that can't be repaired. Misunderstanding? Ben asked, opening his folder. Is that what we're calling documented embezzlement now? Ethan shot him a glare. That's unnecessary. Ben smiled slightly. So was stealing $200,000, but here we are. Richard's composure slipped for the first time. That's an outrageous claim. Every transfer I've made was in good faith. Standard portfolio, reallocations, perfectly normal. Ben clicked a remote. A small projector lit up the far wall, displaying charts and wire logs. These are your reallocations. A bar graph appeared, blue lines plunging into red. Here's where Lily's funds were moved to a shell corporation under your firm's name. That same shell corporation purchased your residence. We verified the tax filings. Same address, same loan closure, different pocket. The room went utterly still. Mrs. Tran pressed a hand to her chest. Richard. But he ignored her, eyes darting to Ethan. You told her about this audit? You let her drag our family through the mud? Ethan's voice trembled. Dad, I didn't. She. Stop, I said quietly. Both of you. Every head turned. I didn't come here for explanations, I continued. I came for closure. Ben handed over 2 envelopes, each thick with documents. In here, Mr. Tran, you'll find a restitution agreement. Full repayment of every cent you took, with interest. You have 30 days. Richard's face blanched. And if I refuse? Then we go to the DA, Ben said. Your firm loses its license. You face federal charges. You won't just lose your house, you'll lose your freedom. Ben turned to Ethan next. And this is for you. Ethan stared at the envelope as if it might bite. What is it? Separation agreement, Ben said. Lily's giving you the house. All she asks is that you waive claim to her accounts, her car, her investments. No alimony, no entanglements, clean cut. Ethan's voice broke. You're ending this? Just like that? Not just like that, I said softly. Piece by piece, over years. This is just the part you can see. Richard slammed his hand against the table. You think you can threaten me? After all the returns I've given you? The trust? Ben didn't flinch. That word doesn't mean what you think it does. He clicked again. On the wall appeared copies of wire confirmations, side by side, my signature and one forged version that had been scanned and reused. My stomach tightened at the sight of it. Seeing the evidence made the betrayal real, heavier than anger could hold. Mrs. Tran whispered, Richard, please. He didn't respond. Ethan looked between us, his composure dissolving. Dad, fix this. Please just fix it. But Richard was already sagging in his chair, the performance leaking out of him. The mask cracked. The man beneath it looked smaller, older, cornered. Ben slid a pen across the table. Sign, Mr. Tran. Richard hesitated, staring at me as though I were some ungrateful child defying the natural order. Lily, he said, voice trembling with fury, you don't understand what you're doing. You're destroying my son's future. No, I said, calm and clear. You already did. I'm just filing the paperwork. For a long moment, the only sound was the clock on the wall. Then, slowly, Richard signed. Ben took the document, flipped to the second page, and handed the pen to Ethan. He didn't move. Ethan, his mother said softly, just sign it, please. His eyes found mine. After everything, you won't even talk to me? You won't give me a chance to fix it? I gave you years, I said. You used them to tighten the leash. His hand trembled as he signed his name. When he put the pen down, it made the smallest sound, a faint click, but it felt like the sound of a door closing forever. They left without another word. When the door finally shut, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt clean. Ben gathered his files. You did well, he said. You kept control. I nodded, though my body felt hollow. Control's overrated, I murmured. I just wanted oxygen. He smiled, understanding more than he said. You have it now. I'll handle the rest. After he left, I sat on the couch with the sunlight pooling on the rug. I should have felt triumphant, but all I could think about was how quiet victory sounds when there's no one left to hear it. The house didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like a shell, hollow, but still standing. The kind of structure you don't demolish, you repurpose. I walked to the kitchen, opened the window, and let the breeze in. For the first time in years, the air moved freely. And for the first time, I didn't ask permission. The house was quiet again. But this time, it wasn't the kind of silence that demanded I shrink to fit inside it. It was an earned stillness, the kind that arrives after demolition, when the dust finally settles and the light finds new paths through broken walls. 3 weeks after that meeting, Ben sent confirmation. The funds had been fully repaid. Every cent Richard had taken was wired back to my account, down to the last digit. The restitution letter came signed with trembling hands, notarized and neat, a paper monument to defeat. I didn't frame it. I filed it away, beneath old architectural plans, the ones I'd drawn back when I still believed stability meant permanence. Ethan moved out 2 days after the papers were signed. He didn't make a scene. Maybe there was nothing left to perform for. I watched from the kitchen window as he loaded his suitcases into his father's car. No final speech, no guilt thrown like confetti, just the sound of the trunk closing, the soft echo of shoes on the driveway. When he looked up at the house, his eyes caught mine through the glass. For a moment, we were two strangers who used to share a life. Then he looked away. That night, I sat on the floor of the empty living room, surrounded by the echo of his absence. It didn't hurt the way heartbreak is supposed to. It was quieter than that, like finally taking off a weight you didn't realize had fused to your skin. Weeks turned into months. The Trans sold their big house in the hills. The investigation into Richard's firm went public. Headlines without my name, which was how I wanted it. He surrendered his license quietly to avoid prosecution. Ethan tried to pivot, I heard. Joined a different firm, smaller, fewer clients, more humility. Someone told me he was living with his parents again. I didn't ask for updates. Freedom requires space, not curiosity. My life reassembled itself in small, deliberate ways. I bought new coffee mugs, plain white with no initials, repainted the living room. Warm sandstone, nothing cold or perfect. I kept the office shelves exactly as they were, slightly off color, wrong screws, perfectly functional. A reminder that imperfection can still hold weight. Work was steady, the kind of steady that doesn't feel like hiding anymore. I took on a new project, a women's shelter renovation downtown. When the director asked why I wanted the contract, I said, because I know what it's like to feel safe in a place that wasn't built for you. She didn't ask anything else. She just nodded. One Friday evening, months later, I stayed late at the office. When I finally left, the streets were washed in rain and red lights. My car, waited under a thin layer of water drops that looked like glass beads. I turned on the engine, the low purr, familiar, grounding. At a red light, I glanced left and froze. Beside me, in the next lane, was a silver SUV, the SUV. Ethan was behind the wheel, the same vehicle that once symbolized everything he controlled, the one I'd handed him keys to when I gave up the first time. He didn't notice me at first. He looked tired, older. His collar loosened. There were grocery bags in the passenger seat. Nothing luxurious, just everyday things. He turned his head slightly, and our eyes met. No anger, no triumph, just recognition of how much we'd both lost and how differently we carried it. The light changed. He didn't move, I did. As I drove forward, I saw him fade in the mirror, still sitting at the line where our roads used to merge. People assume freedom is loud, that it comes with shouts and celebration, like a door slamming open. But it's not. Freedom sounds like the hum of an engine that belongs to you, like the quiet confidence of your own footsteps echoing in a space you finally recognize as yours. Sometimes I still think about that morning, the keys, the question, the hand outstretched, demanding permission. That was the first domino, the smallest moment that changed the shape of my entire life. I used to think love was about sharing everything. Now I know. Sometimes love is knowing when to stop sharing at all. I'm not rebuilding what was lost. I'm designing something new, beam by beam, from the ground up. And this time, the foundation has my name on it.